All right.
Round four.
We're gonna talk about India canceling Pakistani visas, freezing new applications in the aftermath of what happened in Kashmir with Arun Annow, also known as Indian HasanAbi, as he says, but I'm the Turkish Arun.
He is the Turkish Arun. That is correct.
Yeah, he's also like 6'3", by the way. Don't let this camera angle fool you.
Yeah, we're basically almost the same height.
Yeah,
Which
it's
is funny.
crazy.
People were like losing their mind when we actually met in person. They're like, "What the Arun? You're this tall?"
Yeah, it shocked me to my core as well. I have some opinions on Kashmir that I've talked about before. I'm not the most knowledgeable on the situation, but from what I understand, I remember there was a period of like a lot of censorship and complete occupation from the Indian government. This is territory that, as far as I understand, is predominantly Muslim, but
Yeah,
is maintained at this moment in an occupational process by the Indian government. And I remember them shutting off electricity,
internet as well.
What's up?
Complete internet shutdown. Yeah,
Yeah, complete
There's
internet
also
shutdown, complete internet and electricity shutdown as they greatly escalated their occupation a couple of years prior, and it's still very much controlled, from what I understand, but like by figures sympathetic to India and like direct control, even though the population itself is Muslim.
Okay, so you basically hit the basics. You're right.
Yeah.
So it is currently under military occupation. Kashmir is. In order to actually understand Kashmir a little bit, we have to. It's a lot more diverse than people think it is, because it's actually divided into several regions, and it's administered, controlled by different parties. So part of it is controlled by China, part of it is controlled by obviously India, and then part of it is controlled by Pakistan. And it's a very ethnically diverse region as well. So most of the people that we're going to be talking about today are Kashmiri, like ethnically Kashmiri people. But, if you like, those people live in the Kashmir Valley. But if you go to Gilgit-Baltistan, you go to Ladakh, which are different regions of the overall Kashmir region, they're going to be basically they're going to be different ethnic groups, right? But yes, you're generally right in that the majority of that region is Muslim. Right, the majority of that region is Muslim. The most pressing region in that is the Kashmir Valley, which is basically like Srinagar, Pahalgam, which we'll get to in a second, Budgam and Baramulla and all these different Varmul and all these different cities in the Kashmir Valley. And yes, Kashmir is a type of cloth. Guess where it gets its name? That it comes from Kashmir. That's why it got its name, because for a very long time, and I don't know the specifics too much, but if I'm not mistaken, for a long time, the ethnic Kashmiri people lived under different monarchies. They lived under the Afghans. They lived under Mughals. They lived under Sikhs as well. And they were basically treated like shit for centuries. They were basically, for the longest time, they were basically serfs. They were feudal peasants, basically slaves. So that's basically been their existence for several hundred years at this point. A lot of this conflict comes from the fact that at some point, that Kashmir region that I'm talking about, with majority Kashmiri people, Kashmir-speaking people, they eventually fell under the rule of the Dogras. Now, Dogras are the majority. They are the majority ethnic group of Jammu, which is the neighboring region to the south, and they were under the rule of Hari Singh, who was the king of that region. There's a distinct Kashmiri identity, which I want to hammer home. Right, Kashmiri. A lot of Indians don't actually know this. Kashmiris are an actual ethnic group. They just think, oh, Muslim this, Muslim that, right? No, Kashmiris are an actual ethnic group that are indigenous to that region. So there's this weird misconception that like the Kashmiris are just Pakistani immigrants or whatever in India, which is bullshit. It's complete nonsense. We also have Kashmiris in the chat, Saeed Wanka, as well as a guy from Kashmir as well. Getting to what happened recently over the past 2 days, you have a bunch of Indian tourists visiting a city called Pahalgam. Rowan Davis, my goat, he's a Arun Annow Indian HasanAbi certified. He did a really good breakdown on what's going on here. Basically, so in Pahalgam, which is a city in the Kashmir Valley, there were a bunch of tourists. Now, there was a group that's an offshoot called of a far right militant organization called Lashkar-e-Taiba. I think it was Kashmir Liberation Front or the Liberation Front or something like that. I forgot the acronym of it. They launched an attack on these Indian tourists. Now, the vast majority of them were Hindus, right? I think there was one Muslim guy that was trying to help the tourists basically escape from this attack. And the long story short, he was also killed. Right? It's called the Resistance Front.
Mm-hmm.
That's the name of the militant group that actually attacked those tourists.
There was a lot of misinformation that was spreading about this initially, as is expected. But one thing that I saw that I wanted to ask you if there's veracity to this is like they were trying to make sure that they were only killing Hindus or something like that was, or is that just like Israel style commentary on the situation to stoke racial tensions, or is there any veracity to that?
The thing is, a lot of the militant groups, I think the vast majority of militant groups in Kashmir at this point are far-right Muslim fundamentalists at this point. Again, I haven't been able to comb through whether that's actually true or not, but they're far-right extremists. They're far-right Muslim fundamentalists at this point, including these guys, right? So there's probably some element of truth in that they were specifically seeking out Hindu tourists probably. At the same time, like the immediate reaction from Kashmiris themselves, Kashmiri Muslims, by the way, was a complete and utter condemnation on like this attack. So, like again, whether that's true or not is irrelevant to the point because Kashmiris immediately, in the wake of that, completely condemned it entirely, and at the same time, they immediately said we have nothing to do with this, so on and so forth. Right. So that is a completely moot point.
So from what I understand, and I guess this is what Rohan is saying as well, which is that this is a direct byproduct of colonial occupation, or not colonial occupation, but just like military occupation over a region that has a different ethnicity and wants autonomy, whether that is led by more fundamentalist elements that have gotten training as a direct consequence of actions that America played in the region, and then this destabilization or this allowed groups like the one we're talking about right now to take control over the liberation movement and move it in whichever direction, to say like maybe they want to align with Pakistan or whatever. Doesn't necessarily matter, but it's a direct byproduct of a settler colonial military occupation over the region, right?
Yeah. So yes. So like obviously I'm going to make one thing perfectly clear for chat. Obviously the killing was horrific. The killing of innocent civilians is absolutely horrific. There's nothing that justifies that. Kashmiris will tell you this themselves. They literally protested, or they literally did a demonstration. So obviously, like, I'm not justifying any killing. Okay. Second of all, you're right. It is out and about a military. It is a military occupation. And I'm going to talk about one thing. I'm going to talk about a very similar conflict in this, because there's another liberation struggle here, because it's very similar, and there's a connection here. It's the Elam liberation struggle in Elam, the Tamil liberation struggle in Elam. So those two are actually quite connected here, because the Indian Army is involved in both instances. But a lot of the stuff that the Indian Army is doing in Kashmir is very similar to what the Sri Lankan government has been doing to Tamils, and also quite similar to what the Indian government has been doing to Tamils in Elam as well. So there's very stark similarities. There's been enforced disappearances, mass trigger warning sexual assaults, mass rapes here. What the Indian government has been doing to the Kashmiri people for decades is genuinely horrific. There's a podcast named after this phenomenon, where if you oppress a group of people long enough, there's something that is eventually going to come back at you and, blow in a particular way. You know what I mean? There's blowback? I know, it's a crazy phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
This is what we're seeing here is a perfect example of blowback. What we're seeing is decades and decades and decades. Again, this is not justification. This is an observation of what is actually happening, right? What is going on here is that we are seeing decades upon decades upon decades of oppression of the Kashmiri people by the Indian state, right? And forced militarization. Again, Kashmir is one of the most militarized the most militarized region in the world. Basically, you have the general gist of what's going on here. It is a complete military occupation. There are military checkpoints. There have been things such as the mass blinding campaign of Kashmiris, where when Kashmiris would go into the streets and protest for their liberation or for their independence or whatever, they would directly get attacked attacked by the Indian military, and they would get rubber pellets shot into their eyes, and they would be permanently blinded by the Indian state. There's been a massive situation where the Indian government has been engaging in mass blinding campaigns of Kashmiris.
So this attack takes place, and the Indian government springs into action. What are the events that unfolded since then? From what I understand, they canceled Pakistani visas, froze new applications, and perhaps even more consequentially, more significantly, they are revoking the Indus Waters Treaty. From what I understand, Pakistan has deemed India's suspension of the Indus Water Treaty an act of war following the deadly tourist attack in Kashmir's Pahalgam. Here's what you need to know about India's Indus Water Treaty freeze. This shuts off waterways into Pakistan because India is saying that the militant formations only happen under the watchful eye of Pakistan, right? Like that's what they're saying.
Yeah, so India is basically saying they've revoked the Indus Waters Treaty. They're trying to freeze water into Pakistan. This is idiotic red meat that Modi is throwing at his base. That is the entire, like, that is basically what Modi said. And this entire thing about, blocking water going into Pakistan is completely stupid because, as many in India have already pointed out, in order for that to happen, India has to build a dam.
Oh, they don't even. Oh, they don't even have a way to dam it.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that there was at least already like a dam.
Yeah, they need a dam to actually block the water. So they literally just said, "Hey, no, we're gonna block water going into Pakistan." And this is literally just he just said, "Yeah, we're just gonna block water going to Pakistan."
How are they gonna do it?
The entire thing is just him posturing on the situation. That's it.
This is so
like
Trump
literally
coded.
just like
this is such a Trump move, dude. Modi and Trump, incredible allies.
Yeah, it is. You haven't seen some of his speeches in Hindi. That's why he's that's what, like, he says some really unhinged shit in Hindi. That's why. I mean, I don't speak Hindi, and I probably never will. But
okay,
please highlight how the upturning of the autonomy of J&K led to this. Yes. So again, the other main accelerant is, so by 2019, at that point, I mean, the special protections that Jammu and Kashmir had up until that very point had already basically been hollowed out. Any sort of special protections that J&K might have had, that Kashmir might have had, were already hollowed out by the Congress government at that point. And Congress had already been using, they already had laws on the books like UAPA, like Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, and especially Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which they'd actually deployed in the northeastern parts of India, which is Nagaland, Mizoram, so on and so forth, long before they'd actually started doing this in Kashmir as well. Basically, the long story short is that they have, at that point, Kashmiri's autonomy had already been eroded, whatever autonomy they might have had. But in 2019, India basically, Modi's government basically revoked Article 370, which was the constitutional article that gave Kashmir these special protections as a part of the instrument of accession to India that Hari Singh signed. What had happened then is that Modi's administration basically said, you no longer are a state. We are going to split the region. One side is going to be the residual part of Jammu and Kashmir, and the other part is now Ladakh. Ladakh is a separate union territory. So they're both union territories, and they were governed as separate unit. They're still governed as separate union territories. And for about 5 years from 2019, they had no local authority. They had no chief minister. So they were directly ruled by Delhi. Now, the current ruler, Omar Abdullah, is generally despised by the Kashmiri community.
Okay, this seems like a PA style,
it
PA
is.
versus Hamas style situation. Not to bring it back to Israel, but
No. Because here's the, okay, so Israel, India, and then I'm going to bring this up again, Sri Lanka, India, Sri Lanka, very similar in their rhetoric, very similar in their actions, very similar in what they're actually doing, right? And also Pakistan kind of plays a role in this as well, because again, what they're doing in Balochistan is in many ways very similar. What Bangladesh is doing in CHT, Chittagong Hill Tracts, is also very similar to this. There's a lot of occupation and settler colonization that is happening in the subcontinent, right? So this is by no means, and this is one of the things I want to impress upon the audience. What you're seeing what you're seeing in Gaza, what you're seeing in West Bank, that's not unique. It's not unique at all. Many other countries are doing this.
yeah,
right? The reason that you're seeing the reason that Israel gets a lot of attention is
colonial occupation always applies very similar methods of dividing and conquering and creating Bantustan style structures as well, whether it be in South Africa and apartheid South Africa, or whether it be the way that these nation states were designed by European powers in the aftermath of World War I in the region directly.
Yes, and as Nerd That Was Promised says, Kashmiris have faced mass killings, forced disappearances, rapes, murders, torture, and a West Bank-style checkpoint regime from the Indian military, as Tamils and Elam have as well. So it's all very connected with one another. It's very, a lot of the stuff that I've especially seen coming out of late. It's very reminiscent of what I've seen in Sri Lanka previously, and Elam previously. So yes, as far as the Waters Treaty is concerned, this is basically just a move to posture against Pakistan. Now the thing is, the biggest indication of how Pakistan is taking it is Pakistani Twitter is memeing about the entire thing. They're just relaxing and they're memeing about the entire situation. It's like that 50 Cent meme where he's like, "F me, what'd you say f me for?" Right? They're just casually memeing on Twitter.
The causal connection here from India's side, for whether it's propaganda or if there's any truth to it or not, is the fact that they're claiming that the resistance front that you're talking about is backed by the Pakistani government, or the Pakistani military, right? That's what they're trying to say.
Yes. So Pakistan is backing the Pakistani. They are opportunistically backing the Kashmiri militants because, again, Pakistan doesn't actually care about Kashmir either, right? Let's just make that abundantly clear. Kashmiris will tell you this themselves. Pakistan does not actually give a flying fuck about the Kashmiri people in general. They do not give a shit. It's the same way that India weaponizes Balochistan against Pakistan.
It's not dissimilar to like Iran almost.
Exactly. Well, yeah, that's basically what's going on. And now, so after all that, what's been happening so far? So some of the immediate backlash as a result of this is that, the Indian news media has immediately gone on, their revenge campaign. In the wake of this attack, there's a hashtag called "We Want Revenge." In the wake of the Pahalgam attacks, right? There was a hashtag called "We Want Revenge" that was trending with 12,000 tweets. There are 12,000 tweets basically saying "We want revenge" as a result of that, and many people online were basically noticing the way that Hindu nationalists, especially, were reacting in response to all this. Let me see if I can find one of these things immediately.
I have one right here. Hold on, I'm gonna pull it up. Is this Hindu on campus tweet?
Oh yeah, I know.
Today, in the northern Indian state of Kashmir, Islamist terrorists opened fire on Hindu tourists in Pahalgam, killing at least 28 people, with many more severely injured.
Pause. Okay, so quick inside baseball. I've gotten into Twitter beefs with these guys before because these guys are the most annoying losers I've ever seen in my life. They are the most annoying losers I've ever seen in my life. And on top of that, I've gotten one thing that you'll notice immediately out of the gate is that they will talk about Hindu genocide this, Hindu genocide that, Hindu genocide this, Hindu genocide that. But again, sorry to bring this up again, but one great example of a Hindu majority ethnic group that was straight up slaughtered and massacred en masse by another country that these guys seem to be very silent about. Tamils.
Yeah.
Tamils are Elam Tamils. They're a Hindu majority ethnic group that were directly slaughtered by the Sri Lankan government, whose temples are being destroyed by the Sri Lankan Sinhalese Buddhist nationalist government. They never mention Elam. Elam never gets into their mouth. Isn't that interesting? Now, the reason they don't ever point out Elam, they don't ever mention Tamils at all, is because they cannot spin it as this civilizational conflict
between Islam, like Muslims.
Okay, so the reason they don't mention Elam or Sri Lanka at all is because they cannot pin this on Muslims whatsoever. They cannot pin this on Islam. But now they're immediately, again, and a lot of the talking points that you're seeing you will immediately see that they're very similar to Zionists.
Yeah,
they're immediately similar to Zionists. You will see what they're saying immediately, and you will see the almost Zionist talking points that you're hearing here.
The one thing I saw was a dude being like, no, the only place where Hindus are free
Yeah, we're the only Hindu country. Yes.
Yeah, we're the only Hindu country in the world, and even then, we're not free, like, or something, or we're not safe, which is like,
yeah, even then we're not safe. Yes, I remember that tweet.
Yeah,
I don't have it on me at the
That tweet
moment.
right there was just like, it just rung the Hasbara bell for me.
Yeah, it is. A lot of these talking points are straight. They're extremely similar to Hasbara, 100%. A lot of these talking points will sound like Hasbara because it is very similar. These are talking points specifically used to justify horrific crimes done by the Indian state against Kashmiri civilians, against Kashmiris. All of what they're about to say just to remind you what Kashmiris have been dealing with for decades. They have been treated like shit for centuries. The average Kashmiri person has been living as they have been in. It's not just a religious divide. As Rohan mentions, there's a huge class divide that Kashmiris have had to deal with for a very long time, right? Because the majority of Kashmiris did not have access. They were directly oppressed by the British and previous administrations. And then once India became independent, again, they still continued to face direct suppression by the hands of the state. Like again, like I mentioned, enforced disappearances, mass rapes. Let me see if I can pull up an example of what actually they've been doing.
I got a statement here. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has spoken with his Indian counterpart to offer condolences for the Kashmir attack. Prime Minister Modi thanked them for sharing in India's mourning and emphasized that the two countries stand shoulder to shoulder in the global campaign against murderous terrorism, Netanyahu's office said in a statement. Here, while you're pulling that up, let's keep watching what she has to say.
Being described as the worst massacre against the Hindu people in Indian history since the 26/11 attacks in 2008.
Terrorists specifically targeted Hindus.
Okay, pause.
Hindu civilians were...
Pause for a second. Chat, for those of you who don't know what 26/11 is, it's the terrorist attacks that happened in Mumbai, in the Oberoi Theater and in the Oberoi Hotel and several hotels in Mumbai. So when they say 26/11, it was an attack carried out by Lashkar-e-Taiba, again, a far-right Muslim fundamentalist organization. I think this contingent was directly from Pakistan that basically came into India and basically massacred civilians. Indians often consider this to be the 9/11 of India. 26/11 is November 26, but that's the thing that they're referencing here.
Singled out, stripped naked, humiliated, and then checked for circumcision to confirm their religion. Checked to see if they had the...
Wait, I don't understand. Oh, because Indians don't get circumcised?
No, Hindus don't get circumcised. No,
okay, yeah, got it. Because I was going to say...
Hindus don't have to get circumcised.
Yeah, Muslims get circumcised. So I was like, what? I forgot for a second that only America is one of the only places on the planet where you don't have a majority Jewish or Muslim population where everybody gets circumcised.
Yeah. Indians, well, not Indians. Hindus. Hindus, yeah. Generally speaking, India is, in theory, it's supposed to be a secular country, but Modi and his administration are doing everything to make sure that that's not the case.
I mean, and this will, it seems like this will also be used as an opportunity to bring in the ranks and instill more racial tension or instill more ethnic tension.
Yeah.
And justify atrocities towards not only the Kashmiri population, but Muslims as a whole, right?
Yes. Already we actually see, there's a report out, I think today, where 1,500 Kashmiris were literally just rounded up by the police and disappeared. They were rounded up by the Kashmiri state, by the Indian state.
Some aged at 14, it said on this tweet. 1,700 plus Kashmiri Muslims have been arrested by Indian intelligence agencies this morning and taken to unknown locations. Youngsters from 14 years old to 30 years old. I don't know if this is correct or not.
I don't know what the exact number on that is. The Kashmiri journalist is saying that it is 1,500. So this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing it off of Kashmiri Journal. 1,500 Kashmiris have been kidnapped by the Indian state so far. Again, this is adding to the mass enforced disappearances that the Indian state has been engaging in against Kashmiris as well.
Yeah, they have a West Bank style like torture disappearance regime as well, from what I understand.
Yes, they do. It is, again, a lot of things that you're seeing in Kashmir is going to be very similar to what you've been seeing especially in the, I mean, all of the conflicts that I've mentioned thus far, right, is going to be very similar to what you're seeing in the West Bank.
Yeah.
I want to hammer home, if you're not in India, please stop yelling at Indian leftists for not saying some certain things openly. The pro-occupation propaganda runs very deep, and most Indians don't have to contend. That is another thing I do want to mention. So you're from, I mean, obviously you're from Turkey, right? So you're Turkish, Arun, obviously. So there are some things in Turkey that you're probably familiar with that you cannot talk about openly.
Yeah, like the Armenian genocide.
Armenian genocide is a great example. I think you cannot openly voice your support for an independent Kurdistan in Turkey, right?
Yeah,
you
can, but you'll get penalized for it. There's
the same
repercussions for it.
Yes, it's the same thing here. You can very easily get swept up by the police if you are not, even if you're not a Kashmiri person. I mean, if you're a Kashmiri person, you're already like under strict surveillance. You are constantly under. If you're living in Kashmir, you're under strict surveillance. You're living in basically military occupation. If you live outside of Kashmir and you live in mainland India, you are also probably going to be surveilled as well. So you also cannot be open and honest about your opinions on your self-determination. On top of that, but even if you're not from Kashmir, it is a very this is one of those issues. This is one of two issues in India that you cannot, openly voice your opinion on. Just the other thing to keep in mind is it's not just the Hindu nationalists on here that are like immediately, bloodthirsty in the wake of this. Indian liberals are also very bloodthirsty at the moment. And even Vijay Prashad, who is a member of the Communist Party of India Marxist, the CPIM, recently made a statement. And I didn't read the full statement, or at least I don't remember the full statement that he said. He made a statement regarding the attacks, which you could basically amount to a sort of labor Zionist talking point. Because the CPIM, one of the two issues that they suck on is Kashmir, and the other issue that they suck on is that they're really bad on is Elam. Again, they several decades earlier, they threw out members of their own party for opposing the Indian army entering Elam, currently occupied by Sri Lanka, and basically mass raping Tamils and going to hospitals and shooting them dead, basically. Vijay Prashad also made a statement which is very reminiscent reminiscent of what you would expect from a labor Zionist, basically. And that's basically how a lot of communist parties in this region generally operate. The moment you start talking about self-determination struggles, that's when they immediately basically waffle a lot more, basically. For India at Kashmir, surely it can't be land like it is with Israel. No, it literally is the land, actually. Kashmir is the source of water for both Pakistan and India. It is land. That is the reason. A lot of these conflicts are all about land. The same thing with, again, Elam. Elam is in the middle of Sri Lanka is in the middle of the Indian Ocean. It is home to a deep sea port, Trincomalee, meaning you can stick any ship you want there. It's vital for trade. That's why the Tamil self-determination, in a very similar fashion to the Kashmiri militants and in the Kashmiri self-determination struggle, has been violently quelched by the state.
Well, so what do you suspect will happen? Like, where do you think this is going to go?
Where do I think this is going to go immediately? I mean, the immediate aftermath of what's going to happen is, so anyone that's saying that India and Pakistan are going to war, that's immediately not true. That's a silly thing, because both India and Pakistan are nuclear armed countries. They're both they have nukes. So
maybe
both of those
they'll do the cool border crossing ceremony.
Probably. I mean, they already do that already.
I love that shit. That shit is dope as hell.
No, but what's already happening, it's not what's going to happen. What is already happening is, like I mentioned, there's going to be increased crackdowns on Kashmiris living in Kashmir itself and outside of Kashmir in mainland India. This is going to further accelerate the settler colonialism that India has been engaging in, for the past several decades or so against Kashmiris. Again, there was a report earlier today of Kashmiris basically being chased. I think in Chandigarh, if I can find that tweet, I'll send it to you. There's a report of Kashmiris of Kashmiri students being chased out of their homes, and they're basically being forced out by the local people that they're living next to, basically.
So pogroms.
Pogroms, yes. Yeah. Very, like, what we're probably going to see, unfortunately, is potentially a pogrom. Will the conflict only get worse with climate change affecting water access? Probably. India will clamp down on freedom in Kashmir. I don't know if there will be an invasion because Kashmir is literally the most militarized region in the world. Cannot invade a place that is already militarized. Yes.
Question that a lot of chatters have in speaking to their friends, they're saying that a lot of liberals around them living in the United States of America basically turned into like Hindutva fascists overnight in the aftermath of this. Like, is there any way to talk to them?
Sending them Rohan's video is a great start, actually. I'm not going to lie.
To help them develop a better understanding of like how these things transpired.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I think Rohan Davis is a great start. His videos are directly aimed at the Indian diaspora. He is a very progressive Indian citizen, and he is basically aiming his videos all at the Indian diaspora. So his videos can help a lot, I think. As far as that's concerned, the only thing that you can really do is you have to really educate yourself on the region. So you have to really educate yourself on what's going on in Kashmir, and you have to be able to strike down those talking points, because they're already, like, obviously, they're going to have certain send them to Indian leftist streamers who are already part of the HasanAbi community.
What are some of the talking points that they're addressing? That's why I
one
wanted to watch this.
One major talking point that they'll immediately bring up when you mention Kashmir is the Kashmiri Pandits, the exodus of the Kashmiri Pandits. That is the immediate thing that they'll bring up, because so the Kashmiri Pandits, so Kashmiris are a majority Muslim ethnic group, but there's a tiny minority of Kashmiris that are Hindus, and the majority of those Kashmiri Hindus are Pandits. They're Brahmins. They're upper castes, right? Now, so what happened was in the 90s, there was already a exodus of Kashmiri Hindus leaving Kashmir already. What had accelerated that was attacks from, again, far-right fundamentalist militants, and they had eventually they were basically forced out. There's a couple of ways of combating that talking point, because one, the Modi administration has been using the Kashmiri Pandits as also, yes, another thing that Mohammed mentioned is that there's a local Assam MLA. He's a Hindu guy, by the way, who was literally arrested by the Indian government for questioning the government's lack of intelligence on the attacks. Because another thing that India was saying up until this very point was, no, the revocation of Article 370, which turned J&K in Jammu and Kashmir into a union territory, after turning it into a union territory, everything's fine. Everyone was happily going to Jammu and Kashmir. There's nothing wrong. It's just Pakistan that is literally, obviously, what happened to the Kashmiri Pandits is a horrific tragedy. There's no question about it. And the long story short is that India has been engaging in decades of military occupation, yet till this day, the Kashmiri Pandits have not been able to return home. Modi has been in power for 10 years.
Wait, when you were saying pundit, I thought you meant like
political pundit.
Yeah, political pundit.
No, pundit. That's where the term comes from, actually. So the word pundit comes from this word called pandit. Yeah, so pandits is another way of saying Brahmin, basically. So Brahmins are a group of castes. Okay. So Brahmins are a group of castes all throughout India. Again, this gets into caste a little bit, but they're the set of priest classes, priest castes all throughout India. So there's Iyer, Iyengars, Saraswat Brahmin, so on and so forth, right? And these are hereditary classes, right? They left as a result of repeated attacks on innocent on civilians done by right-wing fundamentalist groups. But one immediate way of combating that is, if the Modi government actually cared about Kashmiri Pandits, then why the fuck have they not done anything about it? They're still living in squalid conditions, right? If Modi is somehow this protector of the Kashmiri Pandits, then why has the Modi administration not done anything for them? They've only been using the Kashmiri Pandits as a peg, as a chess piece against to justify the Indian state's violence against the Kashmiri Muslims. Why is the Modi administration not doing anything about that, right? So that's an immediate counter to that. Another thing that is a bit of that's true is that many of these Kashmiri Pandits were part of the Zamindar castes, or they were part of the Zamindar. They were landowners, basically. They were, long story short, they were part of the landowning classes of Kashmir at the time. They were actually while the Kashmiri Muslims, while the vast majority of Kashmiri Muslims were basically serfs, right? A good chunk of the Brahmin caste, the Brahmin Kashmiris, were basically were landowners, right?
A lot of this sounds like British colonial holdovers.
It is. All of it is British colonial holdovers. They were privileged under the British to some extent, right? Again,
Classic,
does not justify anything
that. It's like a classic British move.
Yes. So the British basically put them as a divide and conquer rule, as a divide and conquer tactic. And then the other main talking point against the exodus of the Kashmiri Pandits, one of the original, I guess, guys that was pro-Kashmir liberation, that was pro-independent Kashmir to begin with, was a Hindu. He was a Hindu guy, Prem Nath Bazaz, one of the biggest proponents of an independent Kashmir. That was that many Kashmiris will hold up as a prime dude, as a very good guy, is Prem Nath Bazaz, who was a Hindu guy that was pro-Kashmiri independence. So again, they're trying to bring a specifically communal angle, a solely communal angle, which is obscuring the class angle. Yes, Prem Nath Bazaz was a socialist revolutionary and pro-Kashmiri liberation. Yes. So he's a great example of that. And then also another high profile guy, Yasin Malik, who has been detained by the Indian government since, literally said in the aftermath of those expulsions of the Kashmiri Pandits that the Kashmiri Pandits are an integral part of the Kashmiri citizenry. Again, it's not to downplay any of the feelings that the Kashmiri Pandits might have, any of the anxieties that they might have of returning to Kashmir whatsoever. A lot of them are justifiably communal angle. Okay, so when I talk about communal angle, that's a good question, actually. When I say communal angle, that is South Asian slang for religious bigotry or ethnic bigotry. That's what that means. So they're basically trying to make the expulsion of the Kashmiri Pandits a solely religious angle or a solely ethnic angle, when that's actually not the case. But again, that doesn't justify any of the... that doesn't justify
committed towards the Kashmiri population.
Committed against the Kashmiri Pandits.
One last question for you, Nerd. That was promised actually has an interesting question here, but he says you should give your take on India claiming Pakistan orchestrated the attack and Pakistan claiming it was a false flag attack by India.
Long story short, you should give your take on India claiming Pakistan orchestrated the attack. Pakistan, okay, I have a doubt. I doubt that Pakistan orchestrated the attack because as we speak right now, the Pakistani military is currently clamping down on Baloch people in Balochistan. They have their own issues to deal with at the moment.
And aren't they doing they've been doing mass deportations of like Afghan refugees too, right?
That was like last year, but the big thing this year is that they've been mass arresting. They arrested the leader of the Baloch Yakjati committee, which is Marhang Baloch. They arrested her and they're still holding her in prison at the moment. And on top of that, the other thing is they've forcibly disappeared many Baloch people, never to be found ever again, many of whom they've disabled permanently. But yes, that is so I doubt that Pakistan is directly behind this. What I think is going on is that, again, a lot of the militant organizations that are operating in Kashmir are generally a lot of them are far right, and they are it is true that Pakistan does support far right fundamentalist organizations. That's true because it specifically undermines India. But again, the bigger thing here is that those groups are a reaction, they're blowback to decades and decades of getting the raw treatment by the Indian government. Okay. I don't think it's a false flag operation. I don't know. I don't want to make any declarative statements about it being a false.
So here, this is the point that I was going to make. Pakistan's defense minister told Sky News, "We've been funding terror orgs on behalf of the U.S." Here it is.
You do admit, sir, that Pakistan has had a long history of backing and supporting and training.
I just want to say my life for Pakistan.
And funding these terrorist organizations.
What we hear here.
Well, we have been doing this dirty work for you.
Be careful, dude. All the time they're going to come after you, man.
And West.
I don't care.
Including Britain.
He said it again.
Well, we have been doing this dirty work for the United States for about 3 decades,
Yeah.
And West. Including Britain.
Damn. He said, we've been doing this for about 3 decades. We've been doing this dirty work for about 3 decades for the West and Britain.
So that's
no,
your
I mean, it's
argument
true.
that
she is dumbfounded a little bit that he just came out and said it.
I mean, that's the thing about Indian and Pakistani politics. We don't give a fuck. Like, we genuinely do not give a fuck. We are extremely honest. That's the thing. We're unfortunately vile to a fault, openly vile to a fault. But yeah, so I don't know whether they did this on behalf of the United States. I don't know whether Pakistan was funding and backing and arming those militants in Kashmir at the behest of the U.S. I don't know.
Why would the U.S. even do that, though? Is it to like make sure that if there's any sort of, I don't know, normalized relations with China, that they could use this as a cudgel against India and try to destabilize India? I feel like
I have no idea, man. That's the reason that I don't know why the U.S. would be super interested in Kashmir.
I mean, I think what he's talking about is specifically the Taliban. Like what he's talking about is like
jihadist Taliban here.
Yeah, he's talking about the Mujahideen and the arming of fundamentalist groups that literally got training in madrasas in Pakistan. That is true. That is precisely what he's probably talking about. So I don't think he's talking about anything other than Afghanistan here.
That was a mistake, and we suffered for that. And that is why you are saying this to me. If we had not joined the war.
The other thing that I want to mention is that Nerd makes a good point. It is important to note that Pakistan and India are perfectly capable of fighting over people in the region without explicit directions of the CIA. That is true. Again, India has done a lot of shit, not at the behest of the CIA.
Against Soviet Union and later on the war after 9/11, this Pakistan's track record, was not, unimpeachable track record.
Defense Minister, I just want to get back to this particular incident in Kashmir and the noises that are now coming out of Delhi. Do you believe this situation is going to escalate and that India will launch airstrikes? Is Pakistan preparing itself for that?
We are already prepared for it, We are already prepared for it. Any eventuality which takes place in next 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 days or week or 10 days, we'll retaliate and we'll react to that, in kind, inshallah.
How will you respond if India does launch a series of airstrikes?
We will measure our response to whatever is initiated.
That sounds in like an insane question. Am I right? Like this is 2 nuclear nations that are not exactly fond of one another. The idea that there would be any sort of tit for tat, like actual cross-border operations, it sounds pretty crazy.
Yeah, because if 2 nuclear armed powers, like the India and Pakistan going at each other, is probably one of the most dangerous scenarios we could possibly live in, right? These, again, like you said, they're 2 nuclear armed powers. Like if they escalate any further, then we're all doomed. Like that's the bigger problem here. But I honestly, in my heart of hearts, I think people have been looking at this from India versus Pakistan lens because of the fact that.
Wait, what happened at 11/26? What was the retaliation for the Indian government after the Mumbai attack?
I don't remember. I remember them going on a hunt. It was actually surprisingly very measured in comparison to because that was Manmohan Singh at the time, and they basically went after the guys that were responsible, and they've since been executed. Basically, the long story short is that nothing notable happened in the wake of 26/11. Like nothing in the scale of we're going to escalate with Pakistan, nothing like that.
All right, well, thank you so much, Arun, for coming on. Is there any last words you want to impart on us before?
So a couple of things. You had me. So a couple of things I want to impart. So first thing is, so I know you had a guy from India on. I highly recommend you have someone actually from Kashmir on to talk about this if you're interested. A guy called Azad Isa. I think he's been on Sam Cedars' show before. Azad, I'll send you the link. You should probably have this guy on probably. So that's point number 1. Because I can only give you my perspective on the situation as someone from India. And then the second thing is, just a quick question. So whose dick do I have to suck to get you to watch the Grief-Stricken Winds documentary?
No one's dick, but I mean, I'll gladly promote it once again. This is the Tamil massacre done by the Sri
Tamil
Lankan
genocide.
government. The Tamil genocide done by the Sri Lankan government.
Yes. It is the grief-stricken winds. Would highly recommend, if you can, watch it on stream whenever you can. That'd be fantastic. That'd be great because it is a very similar. Again, the reason I've asked you to watch this is because you will find things extremely similar to what's going on in the West Bank. So that's why I figured it's a very important and very informative watch. I think everyone in the community has, including Mike from PA, has given his seal of approval. Hugo's given it his seal of approval. And also, if you can, watch Rohan's Hindutva video if you can. But those are the two main videos I highly recommend you watch. But also at some point, you want to have an actual Kashmiri guy on.
Yeah, I followed Azad. And I'm looking at his tweets right now, and he's saying some Indians are already invoking comparisons with October 7, claiming India faces an existential threat, and calling for an Israel-like response to the incident in Kashmir. For the media and political establishment, the history of Kashmir will now conveniently begin on April 22nd. The calls for an Israel-like solution are only spiraling online, he says. Talk show hosts are calling for revenge. The army needs to be given a free hand, make things all right. There needs to be a final solution.
Yes,
said Arnab Goswami on Republic TV.
Arnab Goswami is our Tucker Carlson. Arnab Goswami is the guy that yells a lot that I showed you earlier.
Yeah.
And then the guy in the first picture is a guy called Anand Ranganathan, who is a genuine piece of shit. Piece of shit of the highest order. People like him, Subramaniam Swami, Anand Ranganathan literally called for an Israel-style solution for Kashmir. And the thing is that, so in right-wing Indian circles, there are two solutions that are usually floated to deal with Muslims, and there are two countries that are propped up as shining examples. And this is what they say. They usually either point to Israel as
Israel and China.
Bingo, you got it. Israel and China. Yep, those are the two countries that they point to immediately.
All right. Well, thank you for enlightening us on this. In this otherwise somewhat complex situation.
Oh, no problem. Thank you so much. And don't forget to watch the documentary.
All right. Have a good one, Arun.
See ya.
That was Arun Annow, also known as Indian HasanAbi. I'm known as Turkish Arun, giving us some insight into the situation and hopefully helping people calm down a little bit about the potential escalation